On the 5th of April 2015, 39-year-old Victoria Cilliers stood in the open door of an aircraft and looked out over Salisbury Plain in southwest England from a height of 1,200 metres or 4,000 feet. After taking in the view for a moment, she jumped, trusting to her many years of experience as a skydiver and to the parachute strapped to her back. As she began her long fall to the earth below, she felt good, free and happy, doing something she loved. She could not possibly know at that moment that the parachute on her back would fail her, and she would soon join the small cadre of people who have, miraculously, survived a parachute failure. The parachute is an invention that was imagined quite some years before it became a practical reality. Many inventors in the 1700s and 1800s experimented with using large swathes of fabric to slow a human being's fall and allow them to land gently enough to avoid injury. Early parachute designs didn't resemble what we'd recognize as a parachute today. They were huge and cumbersome. The first successful parachute jump was carried out in 1797 by French balloonist André-Jacques Garnerin, and his invention had little in common with the sleek, wearable parachutes of today. Instead, his device featured a basket similar to that of a hot air balloon and an unfolding, umbrella-like canopy. It was carried aloft by a balloon to a height of 1,000 meters, or around 3,000 feet, and then released. The craft oscillated wildly as it fell. There was no vent in the canopy, and so it rocked back and forth as air spilled out from underneath, eventually coming in for a bumpy landing that left its inventor shaken, pale, and faintly seasick, but alive. In the century which followed, many attempts were made to refine the parachute, some more successful than others. French inventor Franz Reichelt believed that he was the first to crack the design of a wearable chute in 1912, but unfortunately fell to his death in a daring leap from the Eiffel Tower while trying to demonstrate it. As World War I began, more time, energy, and funding was poured into aviation, and parachute designs steadily improved as a result. Soon, parachutes could reasonably be stored within a cockpit and even worn without losing too much mobility. It was during the wars that many of the first examples of people surviving parachute failures can be found. There is, for example, the case of Nicholas Alkemade. At just 21 years old, Nicholas went to war, serving as a tail gunner in the UK's Royal Air Force. On the 24th of March 1944, he and 7 other crew members boarded an Avro Lancaster heavy bomber and took off for a nighttime bombing run over Berlin. The mission was a success, but on the way back they came under heavy fire from Luftwaffe fighter planes. As the Lancaster caught fire, Nicholas faced a terrible decision: stay on board and risk burning to death, or jump from the plane. There were parachutes on board, but the flames had already rendered them useless. Jumping would be a death sentence, but Nicholas didn't hesitate. He threw himself from the plane and fell 5,490 meters, or 18,000 feet, to the ground below. By immense good fortune, he survived, his fall arrested by a dense but soft tree canopy and a heavy bank of snow. His only injury was a sprained knee, and indeed he was in such good health that when he was captured by German soldiers, they refused to believe his story. It was only after finding and examining the wreckage of the plane he'd jumped from that they conceded that he was telling the truth. Later, in a prisoner of war camp, he was issued special documentation by the Gestapo to make record of the incredible circumstance of his survival. While Nicholas's 7 fellow crew members died in the crash of their bomber, Nicholas himself survived. He went on to survive the war and lived into his 60s. Nicholas Alkemade was by no means the only person to survive jumping from a plane without a parachute. Another case that garnered a huge amount of media attention when it happened in 1971 was that of Juliane Koepcke. At just 17 years old, she survived a fall of 3,000 meters, or 10,000 feet, when the plane she was flying on was hit by lightning and disintegrated. She was ejected, but remained attached to a bank of seating, which acted like a rotor, slowing her fall. When she plunged into the canopy of the rainforest below, she suffered serious injuries, but ultimately survived and was able to hike to safety. There are dozens of stories like these of people who have, by a seeming miracle, survived a fall that should have killed them. In most cases, this fall was the result of a tragic accident, but the case of Victoria Cilliers is somewhat different. When 39-year-old Victoria Cilliers took on a parachute jump on the 5th of April 2015, she wasn't worried about her chances of survival. Rather, she was looking forward to the experience. She had undertaken thousands of jumps before and was qualified as a skydiving instructor. It was a pursuit that she was passionate about, and she had no reason to believe this jump, which had been a gift from her husband, would be different from any other. On first exiting the plane at 1,200 meters or 4,000 feet, Victoria recalls feeling good. The breathtaking views, the shot of adrenaline, and the thrill of plummeting towards the ground below all combined to remind her of why she loved skydiving. Her good mood didn't change when she tried to deploy her main chute, and it malfunctioned. She struggled with it for a moment, but quickly realized that it was no good. She would have to cut it loose and use her reserve chute. Not a problem, of course. She'd dealt with malfunctions like this before. Calmly, Victoria cut away her main chute and deployed her reserve. It was only when her reserve chute immediately tangled that Victoria realized the gravity of her situation. She was now plummeting to earth, spinning uncontrollably, with no other equipment to rely on. She did not, however, entertain any thoughts of death, but instead turned her attention to surviving the fall that she was now locked into. She knew that it was possible to survive a parachute failure, just as Nicholas Alkemade and Juliane Koepcke had done in decades past. And she knew that there were things she could do to improve her chances. For example, steering towards a body of water if one was available, and spreading out her body to create as much air resistance as possible and decrease her fall speed. There was little time to do either of these things before she hit the ground. There had been no bodies of water to aim for, but by luck she landed in a recently ploughed field where loose earth was piled in large mounds. These offered a small amount of impact absorption. The fact that the tangled reserve chute had put her into a spin also marginally slowed her descent. Victoria Cilliers hit the ground and lived. All the same, it was an immensely hard fall. She suffered multiple broken bones and a spinal injury. The ground team, who had witnessed her fall from a short distance away, raced to her side, but initially approached her with a body bag rather than a first aid kit, convinced that there was no chance at all that she could have survived. But survive she did. And not only that, but she went on to make a full recovery from her spinal injury, eventually finding herself in a position to not just walk again, but return to skydiving. The skydiving school that had organised the fateful jump considered it suspicious that both of Victoria's chutes had failed. They contacted the police, who launched an investigation, and very quickly ascertained that someone close to Victoria had been responsible: her husband, Émile Cilliers. Wishing to claim on a £120,000 life insurance policy, he had made 2 attempts to end Victoria's life. His first had been by damaging the valve on their home's gas cooker to flood the house with gas and potentially cause an explosion. When Victoria discovered the damaged valve, he had written it off as an accident, and Victoria had believed him, even joking with him by saying, "Are you trying to bump me off?" His second attempt had been to sabotage her parachute, which he had done by taking it into the toilet at the airfield just before her scheduled jump. There, he tangled the lines of her main chute and removed parts of the reserve. This sabotage was almost discovered, as her initial jump time was rescheduled at the last minute due to bad weather. Rather than return the sabotaged parachute to the kit store, Victoria's husband insisted on storing it in a locker they both used at the airfield, something that was against standard practice, but which Victoria agreed to, as it might save some time when they returned for her rescheduled jump. Even when evidence of Emil's tampering was found and presented to Victoria, she was reluctant to believe that he had done what it appeared he had done. They had been married for several years and had a family together. While their relationship had not often been a happy or easy one, she still struggled to believe that he would resort to murder. Ultimately, a jury decided that Emil was guilty of attempting to murder Victoria Cilliers. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a term that would last a minimum of 18 years. Nicholas Alkemade, Juliane Koepcke, and Victoria Cilliers all fell from a plane without a parachute, each for a different reason. All three survived. All three recovered from their injuries. The very idea of surviving a fall from a plane with no parachute seems absurd, impossible. And yet, throughout history, a very small number of people have managed to do just that.